nice to be here. Karen insisted I wore this hat. Yes, I want to say something quite serious. I think most of us here are what you might call true believers, in the sense that we think the best kind of society is one where people are really enjoying their lives, feeling fulfilled, satisfied with the quality of their lives. And of course, what follows from that is that what is our goal for us as individuals or for organizations is to contribute to building that good society. Unfortunately, most people don't believe that. Most people have been told that their goal in life is to be as successful as they can compared with other people. Better grades, better jobs, better incomes. So if you just think about that, a world where everybody is trying to get ahead of everybody else, every time somebody goes up, somebody else has to go down, it's a zero-sum game in the jargon. And there's no way, however hard people try to be more successful, that the society as a whole can become happier. Instead of that, we want a positive-sum society where people are trying to contribute to the happiness of other people, get some of their happiness from that, but obviously be happy themselves in the process, but through largely contributing to the happiness of other people. That's a wonderful vision. I hope that's our vision here. But we are few, and they are many. This is the problem. And some of us have been spending more than a decade saying this sort of thing. And I must say I had hoped that after COVID, when a debate began, what kind of society do we want post-COVID, that it would be easy to get our idea in as a top candidate for this discussion. Now, I'm sure all of you here have tried to do that in debates, formal or informal, that you've been involved with. And you will find it's not there. Unless you put it there, it doesn't come in to the debate. It's extremely disappointing, and it's extremely bad, of course, for the future of humanity. So how do you get an idea considered? Well, think how the communists did it. They had a manifesto. Why can't we have a Wellbeing manifesto? So this is what I discussed with Karen before this conference. Why don't we produce from this conference a Como Wellbeing manifesto which sets out what we believe, and then we can... and then we can use that to challenge people in any debate. We can try and get our organization to take that seriously, to adopt that position. If we can, at the very least, we can get it considered because we've got a manifesto. And after this is over, you'll find this manifesto on the website for the conference. So let me just say a bit about it. Why is this so urgent? Of course, it's always been urgent to get this idea accepted. But why is it so urgent now? I'm just going to show you an extraordinary fact, that over this century, short bits of this century, in spite of rising incomes in most continents, stress has doubled in the world. I just looked at it before coming on. I couldn't believe the figure. It has actually doubled in the world from its lowest point to its present level. That's the answer to a question. Yesterday, did you experience a lot of stress yesterday? So here's the... Oh, sorry. Was it all... I'm not sure what's going on. Okay. There's the figure. That tells us a bit about the urgency of doing this. So what is the idea? Just to say a little more about our idea, because that's what the manifesto starts on. Our idea is, of course, I think the greatest idea of the modern age. It started in the 18th century Enlightenment, but the idea is that we would try and produce a society where there was the most happiness and in particular the least misery. It was widely accepted actually 200 years ago in the English-speaking world especially, but also Beccaria in Italy and others in other countries, and of course in the New World. It drove a lot of the reform that we saw over the last 200 years. And the welfare state, the British welfare state, for example, was designed by William Beveridge. He believed in this greatest happiness principle. And of course, what it does is it provides you with a simple answer to the question, what is the right form of moral philosophy and what is the right form of political philosophy? So moral philosophy, it says, the belief about how you should act is you should act to produce the greatest overall happiness that you can in any individual action or in the way you lead your life in general. Political philosophy, it says, what's the objective of the government? The objective of the government is to produce the greatest overall happiness and particularly the least misery. And I would extend it in a way to a sort of intermediate area. What's the aim of every organization? I mean, why do we have organizations? What justifies their existence? They're only justified insofar as they contribute to the increase of human well-being or human happiness. Now, you might ask, why am I using the word well-being and not the word happiness throughout? I'm sure you've all had this discussion. Happiness, to me, is the most natural word, and that's why we have Wahatu. But a lot of people have a problem with the word happiness. They think it's a bit transient, it's not weighty enough, that well-being somehow captures something deeper, more serious. And these are people that, and there are some of you here, these are people that we respect and love. So we need a word which encompasses everybody, including those who are not totally comfortable with the word happiness. So that is why what we are proposing is not the Como Happiness Manifesto, it's the Como Wellbeing Manifesto, and I think it needs a slogan, and this is the one that I suggest. Oh, gosh, this is jumping. That's the one I suggest. Let's put well-being first. How about that? Okay, so if that's your objective, you'd better be able to see whether you're moving in the right direction, which means you better measure it. And the measurement which most of us use, and I'm going to say a bit about its properties, is this one. Overall, how satisfied are you with your life these days? That seems to capture pretty much what we're talking about. If somebody asks you, how do we know people's answers mean anything? And you've all been asked that question. Your answer to them should be, well, one, it's quite well correlated with brain measurements in relevant brain areas. Two, it's almost the best predictor of whether you will be dead in 9 years' time. It's just about as good a predictor of whether you'll live as a medical diagnosis. It's quite remarkable. It's also a good predictor of whether you'll leave your spouse or your job. But here's very important from a political point of view. It is a good predictor of whether you and your country will vote back in the existing government. Now, if there's anything which would make a politician take something seriously, it would be something that would help them get re-elected. And this is the clue to getting re-elected. The studies that colleagues of mine have done show pretty convincingly that a simple measure, this one, of how satisfied the population is a better predictor of whether the government gets re-elected than the state of the economy or unemployment, income, growth, any of those variables. So, obviously, I think it's pretty obvious that if we have an objective, we should be measuring how we're doing. But it's particularly important because we're already measuring other things which are less important. And it's jolly difficult to get something taken seriously when there's a measure out there of something less important and you're not measuring the thing that really matters. And you know perfectly well what I'm talking about. I'm talking about GDP. Couldn't possibly be the most important objective for governments because we know in ourselves and from the research that people's happiness depends much more on the collection of other things than it does on income. For business, of course, profit is essential, but the existence of the business is justified by its contribution to the well-being not just of shareholders, but of workers, customers and suppliers. And it's wonderful that the US Business Roundtable is now acknowledging that. And of course, when we come to schools, we've probably all experienced the distorting effect of measuring grades and nothing else. We were just lamenting earlier on today, music education in England is going down because it doesn't contribute to exam performance. Actually, it may even do that, but they don't think so. Okay, so let me just very quickly go through what this philosophy says for government, business, schools and individuals. So for government, as I said, this was a widely accepted view 200 years ago. That's what Thomas Jefferson said. It's the only purpose of government. And actually, I can't think of any other, and it's what you should say to people. People say, how could you think government trying to increase well-being and happiness? And you should say to them, well, what else do you want it for? Of course, that should include, in particular, the prevention of misery. But what on else do you have it for? So I think that's the starting point of any debate. I'm happy to say that the leader of the opposition in my country, who has I think 70 or 80% chance of being elected, he has committed his government to evaluating every policy proposal in terms of its effect on well-being. I mean, if that happened, if this happened, it would be a really important event, I think, in a world context, because it would then actually be being done in a quite specific way, a much more specific way than you've heard of in a few other countries. I'd just like to make it a point, because some of you here work in NGOs. I mean, this should be the aim of an NGO also. Governments should be evaluating policies in terms of their impact on well-being per dollar of expenditure. But similarly, an NGO that's got a given budget should be evaluating its choices in terms of the impact on well-being per dollar of their budget. It's a perfectly general idea. And of course, it's particularly important to focus on improvements in happiness for people who are currently in misery. So I just want to say a bit about the causes of misery, because they are not well understood by most politicians that I know. So these are actually British data, but they show a very similar pattern to those in all other advanced countries where you've got detailed enough surveys to do this sort of analysis. What is accounting for the scale of misery? There's a distribution of happiness to some people below an acceptable level. What's contributing to the size of that number of people in misery? And top is mental health. And physical health is then obviously important. So is human relationships. So that's at home, at work, and of course having work. And then you see income. Income is important. None of us should ever make the mistake of pretending income doesn't matter. Of course it matters, but it is not the be-all and end-all. And you shouldn't make excessive sacrifices for the sake of income, either as an individual or as a government. So obviously policy implications here are much more attention to mental health prevention and treatment, more attention to measures to support family stability, youth, the well-being of youth, the well-being of the elderly. These are all causes actually cost very small amounts compared with massive amounts of money that are given by many governments to research and development on high-tech, etc. And of course, climate change is right up in the top of any well-being list. Why? Because the well-being doctrine says that everybody matters equally wherever they live and whenever they live, subject to a tiny discount factor. And there would not be a case for this radical approach for non-zero and all of that unless we took very seriously the well-being of future generations, which we should. So let me move very rapidly and briefly from government to business, because Jan will be talking about that at some length. I just want to say one fact, which I think is significant. In these diary studies where people are asked how they spent different hours of the day and how they felt and who they were with, guess what's the worst experience of being with whom during the day? Being with your boss. That's pretty serious. It shows something pretty odd about the philosophy of management. The person who should be inspiring you has almost been trained in the business school to do things that put you down. Be really careful about that. Let me go on to schools quickly. Schools are, of course, the great lever that society has for improving itself, because everybody is going through it. And here, somehow, it's moving without a touch. Here is a finding that we were pleased to discover. This is when you're trying to predict whether somebody will have a happy life as an adult from everything you know about them when they're children. And you can see that the best predictor is whether they're a happy child. It's a better predictor than the qualifications even got right up to the PhD level. So there has to be a rebalancing between the promotion of well-being in schools and the promotion of academic learning. How to do that? Same point I said before, unless you measure it, you won't treasure it. Good methods of measuring child well-being, which are not too onerous on teachers. Centralized methods, electronic, of course, developed in the Netherlands and South Australia, they can be drawn on. And of course, how to raise the well-being of the children in the school has to involve everything that happens in the school, basic philosophy and values of the school, and the general activities, school assemblies and so on. But in particular, there has to be proper weekly teaching of life skills. We now have well-developed, well-evidenced courses. Teachers need to be trained in these materials. which these courses embody and deliver them. I was involved with some others in this study. I recommend any of you who are teachers here have a look up for, it's called Bounce Forward, the organization that promotes that course. So let me wrap up. How are we going to influence the future of our culture and our society? I just want to mention 4 things. So first is we must have pressure groups specifically targeted at that. I think what Hasidu has done a great job promoting the idea of happiness. But we felt that there was a particular need and gap in the targeting of policymakers, both governments and the top people in business. And therefore we launched a thing called the World Wellbeing Movement, which Sarah Cunningham will be talking about on Sunday. That's the World Wellbeing Movement. So please look at that, and I think you'll find you can get a mass of good arguments and good material from that. So that's pressure groups. Second is education. We need an army of people who understand what the causes of well-being are and how it can be improved and can carry this knowledge into their jobs as decision makers, as policy analysts, as teachers, in whatever capacity. So that requires a textbook. And I think there's a leaflet in your bags that tells you how you can get hold of this. This was written by Jan de Neve and myself, and it's an attempt to show doubters that this is a really solid concept, there's a really solid evidence base, and that this is a sub-discipline that should be taught. It can be taught at any level in schools, universities, and it's like, let's say, geography. I mean, geography is not really a subject, it draws on everything. Well-being draws on even more than geography does. So we need to get well-being established as a subject. Thank you.
Richard, we need to have a manifesto, don't we?
But,
we need to have our manifesto.
Look, I'm just finishing.
Okay, great, because I'm here and I'm ready to sign it.
Okay. Next, of course, we need to inspire individuals, and that's that's our book. That's what's done by Action for Happiness that many of you here belong to. And its members pledge to try and create as much happiness in the world and as little misery. And then my 4th way of changing things is the manifesto. So I think this is a huge opportunity, something I realize we've been lacking, something that we can push into the debate. Wonderful that Karen has taken this idea on board, made it a big feature of this conference. Please sign. You can do it. Karen's about to explain it, but I want to say just 1 or 2 things. Please sign it, and then at the end of the conference, Karen is going to tell the world that you've done so. But what we want then is, of course, for thousands of people who are not here to do it, including organizations, for example, that you belong to, particularly important that each of you takes this manifesto and asks your organization, can it support it? Even if they say no, you will have started the debate in the right way. We also, of course, want many individuals who are not here, famous ones. I believe that Frank Appel, the head of DHL, is listening to this. I'm hoping he's going to sign up. But also we want as many people who are not famous as well. So we've got to get this argument into the debate into the centre of the debate? I think we can, and if so, this would be, or could produce, a significant change in the culture of the world. So let's put well-being first.
Bravo. Bravo, Richard. Fantastic. Isn't it amazing to have this level of work, right? And this force of nature. Woo! Bravo, Richard. Bravo. So we're so excited because now we're going to have something that we can actually do and have greater impact. So we're going to be able to sign it online. It is now on our app, on the Wahaso app, on the website. And get involved, you'll see the manifesto. But I would like to invite Alberto Novis to sign it and Mayor Rapinese to sign it. So this is an amazing moment in time.
No, please.
No way.
And by the way, I wore orange
English.
because Richard wore orange.
So,
The first government official to sign it, our first CEO to sign it, our first change maker to sign it. And it will be available in the tables outside. So after today, you can start signing it and over the weekend. And we're going to report online and also in person who has signed it. So please be part of the change. Thank you so much, everybody. Thank you.